Good afternoon, everyone. Buenas tardes and boa tarde. Thank you for joining us from all over the Americas. We are here today with David Lee, the founder of Cultural Cuba, which is such an exciting destination. So, David, I think you have a lot of things to tell us today, and we will take the Q&A at the end if you don't mind sending us a little message, and we'll do it after your speech, David. So, David,
okay,
it's yours.
Perfect. All right, great. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for sharing your Thursday afternoon with us. It's greatly appreciated, and despite the fact that we've all been doing these Zoom calls for a year, I don't know. Maybe I'm just weird, but this is truly one of the highlights of my day. So don't hold that against me. I just it's nice for me. This is the one of the many parts of what my job that I truly love. So anyway, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to share my screen with you. I will start going through the webinar PowerPoint part of this whole thing. I'm going to try to go through it fairly quickly, because if this particular webinar is anything like the past ones that we have done together with Dominique, there's a lot of questions, and I want to leave plenty of time for that. It's probably the most important part of these webinars. This is the benefit of all of you tuning in live, and I also enjoy it too. So it gives me a chance to talk to all of you. I think we can. I don't know, Dominique, if they can actually, if they're willing to, they can be on screen as well when they ask questions. I don't know if you can do that or not, but I love that if we can do that. I know not everybody feels their camera ready and all that kind of stuff, but there's no judgment coming from this direction.
Okay.
So if you're willing to, when we do Q&A, it'd be great to have to see everybody.
Okay. So
I'm going to switch and share my screen now. Also, for some reason, when I do it on my device here, you won't see me during the presentation. I don't know why that is, but it's unique.
They can still see me.
They can still see you, yes. And much more important than seeing me. Seeing Dominique's smiling face is much better than mine. So, all right, here we go.
Right, so we're waiting for you.
All right, off we go. Okay, there we are. You see my logo in the bottom right. That happens to be in the top a picture of the pool deck of the lovely Kempinski Manzana Hotel. And let's get going here. So first and foremost, I would like to just mention this is not my first business, but I'll tell you what, I was fortunate that after a number of years, and I've been an entrepreneur for a long time, of doing businesses with the primary motivation being profit, I switched gears when Cultural Cuba was created. And this is a passion project. So it's about passion over profit. And we have taken that to heart now, so much so that we are now giving back to support for the Cuban people, all of the profits beyond what it costs for us to do this business. I spent 10 years living in Central Europe. Budapest, Hungary was my home base, and that's where I was doing a telecom business. This was over a decade ago, but it enabled me, the main thing it enabled me to do was travel the world. And I became obviously a very passionate traveler, like many of you are, of course. Everyone who chooses this as a profession, I believe, has that within them. And what was so fascinating to me is after I had moved back to the United States, which is where I'm from, I had an opportunity to travel to Cuba, which is only 90 miles from Florida. So literally it's one of the closest islands you can travel to from the United States. Yet being American, Cuba had this sort of forbidden fruit aspect to it, because it's one of the few places on planet Earth that Americans actually are, can travel to. We're free to travel there, but we have to go with certain restrictions. And I had never been. I had been interested in Cuba, started with cigars, to be quite honest. And then from cigars, it led to rum, and rum led to salsa music, and then jazz. And then, I started getting more interested in the history of Cuba, very rich history. And that led to my first trip there. I knew I would like Cuba. I had no idea that it was going to be the love affair that happened in very, very short period of time. I knew I wanted to come back. I wanted to show it off. I wanted to take friends and family and return as often as I could. And that is when I discovered that there really wasn't a company, a destination management company that would enable me to travel to Cuba in the way I like to travel, which is private and custom. So that's really how this started. This was 9.5 years ago. At that time, like I said, there were companies doing Cuba, but they were doing what I call the big bus tours. Travel to Cuba on a cookie cutter, very fixed, inflexible itinerary with lots of strangers on a bus. I don't, quite frankly, like to travel anywhere in the world that way, but it's certainly not the way to see Cuba. And that's how Cultural Cuba was born. It started out as just me going back and forth, taking people to Cuba, and then it became a business. So it's not an exaggeration when I say, Cuba is one of these places. We call it like the the closest, farthest place you can travel. Oxymoron, but the point is, you get on an airplane, whether it's from Latin and South America, Europe, or the US, and you are transported back in time, 50, 60 years, to what I call the land of magically talented artistic people. That it's really all about the people. I know it's cliche, you hear this often, but Cuba, say what you will about the government, and there's a lot of reasons to criticize and certain issues going on. But one thing holds true, and that is these are incredibly well-educated people who have a passion for the arts, whether it's music, dance, fine arts, that is knows no equal in the rest of the world, to be quite honest. And that is one of the things that makes it such a special place to visit. So moving on, it is, it's not a plan it yourself destination. Now, and that, of course, given that on this phone call, obviously we have a majority of, high-end travel advisors, it should be music to your ears, because they need you. Your clients need you to get the most out of a trip to Cuba. They need you and they need us. And we work together with you. In fact, our goal entirely, we're a B2B company. You are very important to us. You are literally our outside sales force. We do not market directly to the end client. We do our travel through luxury travel advisors. That's what we're set up for. So even if first of all, if you're coming from the United States, obviously it requires assistance, because legal travel to Cuba has certain requirements. I don't want to get into a lot of detail on those requirements right now for this call. We can, when you actually have a client interested, and if you haven't done it before, we'll talk about what those are. But the quick answer is, we handle all of it. So it is seamless, and it's not an issue for the clients. Anything that quote unquote makes it a legal trip is something that we do so that it is it's transparent, but at the same time, it's a non-issue. We handle the visas, we handle the itinerary, we make sure the itinerary is quote unquote a legal itinerary. We keep all the documentation that needs to be kept for the clients. They don't need to worry about any of it, and neither do you. The other aspect, though, beyond just how it affects Americans, is it's a third world country. It's not the kind of place that has a timeout guide. To get the most out of it, to get to the real heart of what really makes the island tick, the fact that, the off the beaten path destinations, etc., you're not going to get that experience by simply booking a hotel and showing up. So it doesn't matter if your clients are European, if your clients are from Latin and South America, if they speak Spanish fluently, it's still, to get the proper experience, to really come back from that trip and recognize that it is one of the best places you've ever traveled to, doing it with a company like ours is what changes that experience. Quick thing about, again, this is part and partially about American travelers, but not completely. So I started by telling you how we started Cultural Cuba, and the fact that we are support for the Cuban people. That is the mission of our business. It doesn't matter whether the clients are traveling from the US or US citizens, or whether they're coming from any other country. We put 100% of our profits back into support for the Cuban people. And we do that with a variety of projects and charities that we support. Some that are completely 100% funded, started and funded by us, and some that we are just a critical part of. But we want the clients to not only know where those funds are going, but experience it for themselves firsthand. So we almost always put it into their itineraries, and it doesn't mean that it's, it doesn't take a long time. For example, that cute picture up in the corner there is taken at a preschool for children aged 3 to 5. They come from a disadvantaged, low-income neighborhood in Old Havana. These are children who they would have nowhere to go. If they didn't have this preschool to go to, and they're provided 2 nutritious meals, clothing, and a Head Start education program, so that most of the time they are actually reading before they go to kindergarten when they turn 5. And this is one of the several projects that we completely support, and we love taking clients there. They love it too. It's a special experience. So you hear this travel with a purpose, and it's something that is certainly being highlighted now, I think, with people coming out of this COVID situation, and we're hoping that really it's here to stay and not just the fad of the moment, but travel with a purpose is, again, what we're all about. So in addition to the preschool, for example, we fund a dance school and a professional dance company. We have several other artists, both fine artists and jazz musicians, that we also fund, a senior center. And these are all aspects of that we immerse people in if they want to be, or at least we just let them see a part of it during their experience in Cuba. And I'll tell you, for the most part, if it's not one of, not the highlight, it becomes one of the highlights of their experience. Quick thing about our guided experiences. So guided travel is really the MO of the business. We, for the most part, it's very rare that we wouldn't. We include a private, dedicated guide for every single one of your clients who travel to Cuba. That guide is theirs, dedicated only to them, whether it's one person, 2 people, a family, a multi-gen family, a larger group, doesn't matter. They get their own private guide, multilingual guide. Of course, they speak fluent English. Some of our guides speak other languages as well. Obviously, they're local. They are Cuban, grew up in Cuba. They're highly educated. Most of them have advanced degrees, not just bachelor's degrees. They're very interesting, but more than that, they're fun, they're people, they're into people. That's why they have chosen the profession of being guides and why we hire them. We don't hire just anyone, right? The personality is what makes the biggest difference with our guides. And the idea that we're trying to espouse on every trip this is more like travel. It's not a guide that's there to point out dates and statues and corners and then let's go to this museum and that sort of thing. It's as if you're traveling with a local friend or relative who's showing you their culture and their city and what they love about it. And they are also very interested in the travelers that come, because they're starving to learn more about, the outside world as well. And so almost always, the clients leave feeling like they have a true friendship and true relationship with their guide. And that's what we're shooting for in every experience. We get this question a lot: how long of a trip should I plan? And of course, that's a range. But I will say one of the nice things about travel to Cuba, especially for clients that are in the United States or in Latin and South America, is it's not far away. It lends itself really nicely to a long weekend trip. So we do a tremendous amount of those. 3, 4, 5 night trips are actually 75% of all of Cuba travel. It's very Havana focused when you take trips that are in that range, because obviously we don't want people packing and unpacking and driving long distances to other cities, staying in different locations. So a 3 to 5 night trip is certainly Havana focused. And then the next range would be the 6 to 8 night trips. And in those trips, normally we would spend 4 or 5 nights Havana, and then a couple of nights in another city. But just to be clear, when you move on from a Havana-based trip, there is always going to be a significant amount of driving involved. To give an example, Trinidad, you probably heard of Trinidad, Cienfuegos. Trinidad is a gorgeous UNESCO World Heritage City. It's a 4-hour drive from Havana. And in most cases, especially right now, for any clients traveling back and forth from the United States, they have to fly back and forth from Havana. So we still have to do that round trip back again. And that's why I say that, going to another city, definitely plan on it being at least a 6-night trip. Couple of specialty items that Cuba is known for. One of them is snorkeling and scuba diving. There are wonderful locations to do both of those. We recommend, if anyone really is into snorkeling or scuba diving, but again, plan on it being a longer trip, just because of the driving that's involved. Fly fishing, incredible place for fly fishing, world class for that, and also for birding. Those are probably the top 3 right there: diving, fishing, birding, snorkeling, as far as the nature-based aspects of travel to Cuba. Okay. Frequently asked questions. I'll hit a few of these, and then we're almost done with this portion of it, and I'll get back on screen to hear some of your questions. As I said, definitely don't have to be part of a big tour group. In fact, that's not really what we do. Our groups are private, completely individual, completely custom. That doesn't mean it can't be a big group. We've done group sizes of over 100 people, alumni boards for universities, big corporate incentive type trips, big birthday trips, weddings, a lot of destination weddings, that sort of thing. Those trips can be very big. The key from our company perspective, again, though, is they are still private, custom private trips, not trips where you jump on with a bunch of, again, strangers. Obviously, no specific dates, because everything is customized. Best time of year to go to Cuba, really, it's, seasonality for Cuba is all about weather. It is the Caribbean, so very similar to other destinations, other islands in that area. The weather, the high season weather would be, say, from the middle of November to end of April, early May, because it's a little bit drier, it's a little bit more mild, not as hot. You can go to Cuba any time of year. There's always something going on. It's a wonderful destination almost any time of year. It's just a question more about heat and humidity is what really changes, the idea of what is the most ideal time to go. Special occasions, like I touched on earlier, absolutely. We do more and more of these. It's becoming such a popular place for it. And I think part of that reason is there's so much to see and do that appeals to a wide variety of people that, everyone is happy. And because of the nature of the arts there and the high level, there's so many special things that we can do that also doesn't, having a Grammy award-winning jazz musician play privately for a private birthday party or wedding or group like that. If you were to do something like that in most other locations, just the cost alone would make it only accessible to the very, very top of your high net worth clients. That's not the case in Cuba. So that's another reason that it is so popular. We can do these, like what would normally be $1 million wedding for so much less. in Cuba with so many of these special, unforgettable experiences. We already touched on that, of course, no rigid itineraries. Quick thing about the planning process, and I'm going to change this because it doesn't have to be 60 to 90 days. There was a time when we really needed that much, but not anymore. Ideally, we would like 30 days to do a travel to Cuba. Obviously, it's just, there's a lot to plan. And the more time we have, the more things we can add and plan. But, we don't like to say no, and we never have. So, do not think that because someone is interested in traveling somewhere and they give you literally, a few days to a week notice that Cuba is off the possibility list. It's not. Just call us. We will make it happen. Commission wise, for the most part, we just do net pricing. I mean, almost every travel advisor seems to be pretty happy with that. We will give you the lowest possible price we can. We'll talk it over with you. We want you to earn as much commission as you can. We will then tack back on the commission so that when we create a detailed proposal, it's very easy for you to simply send it right on to your clients without any worry, and your commission is built in, and no one's the wiser there. And that makes it easy also for charge for billing with credit cards, which, by the way, we do take credit cards for Cuba. Absolutely. The clients safely pay for their trip here in the United States. And 90% of anything they're going to spend on their entire trip while they're in Cuba will be covered in our pricing. So, for example, our proposals will include the accommodations, the visas, round trip transfers, of course, because they're not only going to get that, they're going to have a private vehicle and driver. And let me be clear that we do not work with driver guides. We have our own drivers and we have our guides. They're two separate people. They'll also have a dedicated guide, full-time, so full-time vehicle and full-time guide. And by the way, if it's only 2 people, 3 people, sometimes 4 can also fit. We have a fleet of 1950s renovated, classic, American cars. And that is what your clients will be driving in full-time. This is not going to be one of those, we went to Cuba and we got to spend, 45 minutes driving around in a cool car. No, that's your car the whole time you're staying there. All activities, anything special that we do, special experiences, special visits, special sites, certain meals, not necessarily all the meals, we'll talk about that. Gratuities, commissions, everything is included. Quick thing on now, that's the important thing also when we quote you pricing so that it's very clear. Obviously, there's a range. The biggest issue affecting pricing is going to be accommodations. So that's why we have such a broad range. For people who want to stay in more of a private villa or very small boutique hotel, the range is, the pricing is a bit less. And I can go into later on details about, what distinguishes that and what's the pro and con of staying in a boutique private hotel versus, a 5-star larger luxury hotel like the Kempinski, for example. But that's really what makes up the difference in the range of our pricing. Because again, we always have private guides and drivers and all these sites and experiences and all of that included. That itself doesn't really change pricing very much. Our booking and cancellation policy, given the new environment, COVID environment, post-COVID environment as well. Obviously, our whole goal here, just as your goal is to get people to book travel and not be afraid if they have to cancel because of coronavirus. Let's hope there's a big light at the end of this tunnel. And on the days of constantly worrying that there's going to be a spike and they have to schedule will become, less and less, but it's still a reality today. And therefore, absolutely no penalty for trip postponement due to COVID. And that's our policy. It's not something that they need to get insured by an outside insurance company and pay a tremendous amount of money for. Of course, we still encourage trip insurance for all the other reasons that people should get trip insurance. But We don't want them to feel they have to get it because of COVID. So we will be very generous about that. And when I say trip postponement for COVID related concerns, I don't mean your client has to come down with COVID. It can be that, obviously the country has a spike. That could be one issue. They're worried about a quarantine coming back into the US or back into their home country, wherever it is, not only the US, of course. We get it, and we don't want people to be afraid. So we will, no penalties. We will simply, postpone the trip and reschedule it for a time when these are no longer concerns. COVID-19 and travel, we'll talk more about that when I come back on the screen to talk about what's going on right now. And of course, everything that we're going to put in place going forward in the future as well. So with that said, I'm going to come back on and we can answer your direct questions.
Thank you very much, David. As usual, very interesting and definitely. So you wanted me to bring anyone who has a question then?
Yes, please. I just want to open it up to the floor, and then I'm sure based on those questions, I'll be able to, also talk a little more detail on some of the stuff that I touched on.
So I'm going to start with Celine. Celine, you're on the Q&A. You said with the currency changing now in Cuba, are we allowed to bring US dollar, tip in US, and bring gift to locals as in the past?
Yes. So when she's mentioning something about currency changing, what she's referring to is the fact that there used to be a dual currency in Cuba. There was a currency which was the Cuban peso, which actually was really only for the Cubans who lived there, only for residents. And then there was something called the convertible peso, which was nicknamed the CUC because it was called CUC, and that was for hard currency transactions. The CUC is now finished. Everyone is going to be paying with the peso, but most importantly, from the standpoint of you and your travelers, you simply can pay with US dollars. If you're coming from the US and you have US dollars, you can pay with US dollars. You will not need to convert to the peso ever. It makes it very, very easy. If you're coming from, so any hard currency, if you have euros, you don't have to change euros either. The businesses are accepting those currencies. In fact, they prefer them. So it makes it very, very easy. One quick note though, for American travelers, it doesn't affect anyone else. Credit cards still do not work in Cuba. Your ATM machine cards won't work in Cuba. So you have to bring cash. For everything though, it's only for what isn't already covered by us. And that's why I said 90% of all expenses for a trip to Cuba is already built into our packages. So we really limit the amount of money that people need to bring with them. A couple $100 a day is more than enough. And in fact, I would say $100 a day per person is more than enough. And we talk about that though. When your clients are getting ready to go, we have a things to know booklet. We talk in a lot of detail about, how much money they should bring. We don't want them to run out of money. So, if you're bringing back cigars, I think she even mentioned in the question about bringing back gifts, that kind of thing. We talk about how much you might need to bring with you to cover you. So.
Well, so David, I have brought in as panelist everyone that I saw that is asking a question.
Excellent.
Everyone else, I'm leaving you an attendees, and as soon as you have a question, I can put you in the panelist, and then you have the choice to open your camera or
yes,
or
don't be afraid.
Or at least your mic, maybe if you wanted to ask the question live. So let's go back to the Q&A in this package. Where was Celine? You had a lot of questions. So let me go back. Gastronomy is still an issue with hotel or restaurant. Is the government doing anything to make it better? Maybe hire chef, train local cooks, or more international cuisine?
Oh, okay, yes. So let me tell you something. If you've been to Cuba yourself or had clients there and they haven't been there in the last, let's say 4 years or so and going forward, they might think that it's still it's not a destination for food. That has changed dramatically. So the short answer is yes, it's a gastronomic destination. Absolutely. The food is fantastic now. And in fact, it's part of the experience. So the best food in Cuba is served in paladars. Paladars are the short definition is private restaurants, not owned by the government. And that is where cultural Cuba travelers will eat every single meal. They'll have breakfast in their accommodation, whether it's a hotel, boutique hotel, private, that's where they'll have breakfast. But lunches and dinners will be in paladars. Every paladar is different than the next. It's part of the experience. Paladars started out as like a table in someone's home, and most of them are still quite small. But they have chefs from all over the world consulting. They have top chefs that are partners in this. So the only thing limiting the Cuban cuisine is access to ingredients, but they're so incredibly creative. And like I said, it's definitely changed. It's not just a black beans and rice destination anymore. So food is a big part of the journey.
All right. Are you permitted to sell casa particulares as tour operator in Canada do?
Permitted? Of course. Of course. But let me be clear about this. We don't do Airbnbs, if that might be what you're referring to. And not because I just want to separate this out, because Cuba is a third world destination. The infrastructure is crumbling, and has been for a long time. So this is not the place to take a well-traveled, high net worth individual and put them into an Airbnb type place. I don't care what experiences their friends said they had, or it's not safe. There's cleanliness issues. There's inconsistencies. You cannot simply believe photographs that you see online. Do we put our clients in private villas and private homes? Yes, but it's a short list of top homes that we are personally involved with. I'm not saying by ownership, but we know the management. They're very well vetted, and that's what we will work with. But beyond that, no, we're very careful about it. This is a destination where buildings collapse every single day, and it's just this isn't the place where you experiment with the Airbnb type location. Not for your clients.
Mm-hmm. Roseanne, you're asking, in Cuba, nothing can be paid extra to get, for example, fast line immigration. Usually in many countries, as I mentioned, Chinese train do not recommend internal flight as only Russian aircraft. She said that because she would like to include Trinidad and other cities.
Okay, sorry, I may not have completely understood the question. So what I think the question is about, what is the internal country transportation like within the country? Is that right?
First, she said she's acknowledging that nothing can be paid extra. So you cannot pay extra for the fast line at immigration.
Oh, skipping the line, so to speak. Mm-hmm. Well, if you're thinking about the socialist ideals, and Cuba is still a socialist country, you might assume that you can't, unlike most capitalist countries where money talks, right? But I will tell you that it's not that different. So there are VIP services, and our clients do in some cases, have a shorter line through immigration. The complication, and only with the airport we're talking about right now, is that the VIP services there are completely controlled by the Cuban government, and they're not very good. They're inconsistent. And so we warn, even though we as Cultural Cuba would love to work with a private company or own our own private VIP company at the airport, we're not allowed to. So everyone who does VIP services through when people land have to work with the Cuban government's VIP operation. And that's the only problem. Is some days it's great and some days it's just terrible. And so we always warn people, this is one area We pay their fee. We don't mark it up. We can show you exactly what it costs to do the VIP service, and we'll put it on the trip for everyone if they want it. But it's just okay. It's not as good as you're going to experience if you do VIP, transfers in Europe, for example. But here's the other thing. They're quite efficient, actually. It's very rare that people spend a long time waiting to go through immigration. And remember, our driver and guide, the personal private driver and guide, are literally waiting at the door. So the only aspect that VIP services will help with is that small amount of time that you're going through immigration. And it's not a big deal. And then after that, the guide and driver, boom, are right there. So.
Right, the second part of the
okay.
question.
Oh, sorry. Yes. The second part of the question is about transportation within the country.
Yeah.
Yes, it's not good. It's not good at all. And therefore, we do not put our clients on any public transportation ever. Be it, first of all, the trains are almost non-existent, so that's not even an issue. The internal Cubana Airlines, it's older equipment. I think they mentioned Russian aircraft. It's not just the fact that it's Russian aircraft, it's old Russian aircraft. There are maintenance issues. The Cuban Airlines, in fact, lease most of their equipment from Mexicana, and it's the equipment that Mexicana is no longer using. So quite frankly, the answer is yes, we transport our travelers throughout the island, but only by vehicle. And it's not public, it's one of our vehicles. So that is a factor. That's a factor when it comes to longer trips where you want to go to other cities. Cuba's a very long and big island. It's the length of California. And so if somebody says, hey, they really want to experience Havana, they want to experience Trinidad, okay, great. Those are relatively close together. If they say they want to go to Santiago de Cuba, the second biggest city in Cuba, amazing place, great history, amazing jazz there. It's a 12-hour drive, and there's no shortcut right now. So, that's the kind of stuff that we just want to make sure the clients understand. Of course, we're going to break up that drive. We're going to have them stop at other cities along the way. But for the time being, especially back to the US, there's no flights back. So no international flights. So it's not like we can say, great, you're going to land in Havana, and then we're going to stop in Trinidad for a couple nights, and then from there go to another city, and then go to Santiago, and then you're going to fly home from Santiago. Unfortunately, that doesn't exist, so we have to drive back to Havana for them to fly back home.
Mm-hmm. So, but on the Français, you were asking, do you include Santiago de Cuba? So yes, that answered that question. Melissa,
I love it. I love Santiago de Cuba.
Yeah.
And hopefully the flights will come back. So a lot of things are going to change. Mm-hmm. A lot of things. That's why this is always in flux. Doing business in Cuba is never a dull moment, just from the standpoint of like things are always changing. So we do expect there to be international flights to and from Santiago. I just can't tell you exactly when that's going to happen again, and that will really change the number of trips we do there.
Melissa, you're asking if you can get some pictures, because you said you can never get enough of Cuba information, and if David will share with you some image that they can use on social media.
Of course.
Huh?
Absolutely. We're happy to.
Yes. Celine, you don't have much car rental requests. We don't have much car rental requests, and because it's difficult, but I discovered a company, I think they're Dutch, and quite difficult to get an availability. Do you handle this arrangement? What about car rental insurance?
Well, I'll tell you, we don't really work so much with car rentals because we provide the car and the driver. That's what we're about. Can your client, in theory, are there car rental services? Yes. It's complicated. The roads, some of the roads are great. A lot of them aren't. If they have a breakdown in Cuba and they're not familiar with the territory, dealing with that situation there is quite complicated. And it's not really for the clientele that we cater to. If instead, I'll tell you honestly, we're going to really encourage your clients to forgo driving themselves around the island and have a car and driver, and the cost is not going to be much more.
Mhm.
So, we're talking about the high end, right? This isn't the place to
Just
rent a car and drive around.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Alors, Céline, you're also asking in the package, do you set the menu prior or can they request according to the client's preferences or needs?
Yeah, great question. So when it comes to food, first of all, for most of our groups, if they're a smaller group, we do not want to have prefix menus ever. And therefore, we actually don't include the cost of meals. We will have the restaurants already pre-reserved because I talked about the polydars. They're very special. We vet them. We make sure that the ones that have been around for many years are still worthy of being on our itineraries, and we're checking out all the new ones that are opening up to see if they're, how good they are and if we should put them on our itinerary. So we put all the restaurants into the itinerary because, again, also because they're so small, we want to make sure that we have to reserve these tables, well in advance. But we don't necessarily want to include the cost of those meals because we want people to order off menu.
Mhm.
We want you to have the full experience. Sometimes you're really hungry. Sometimes you want to just have tapas and share a bunch of different things with the people you're traveling with. That's the kind of nature that we expect people to have for their food experiences. And so that's why, the short answer is, yeah, we don't do prefix menus. Now, if the group is much larger, let's just say 8, 10 people and above, and it's so much more convenient to have food, or at least a majority of the meals included. And also just from the standpoint of these small restaurants, they want to know how many people are coming for every meal, and they need to have the food ordered in advance. Food ordering is very complicated in Cuba. Then we'll do a sort of a prefix. It'll be one of those situations where the food is already planned. However, there'll be choices of appetizer, choices of the middle course, choices of the main course, beverage choices, that sort of thing. But instead of full menu, it'll be a little bit more limited. So that's how we handle it.
Mhm. And the pricing that you show are the ones set for 2021 and 2022?
Yes.
Huh?
Yes.
Jeannie, we have you. You know that everyone can speak and have the mic. Huh? I have, as I said, brought two panelists, everybody that have been asking a question, and I'm going down the Q&A and the chat. So soon I'll be reaching your question. Jeannie, can you issue the visa from the US to Havana, or do we need to do this? You said yes, David. Huh?
Yes, we include the visas. We actually have a contract with the Cuban government. We write our own visas here in our US office. So we include that. We FedEx, it's a physical piece of paper, the visa, and we FedEx that visa to the travelers about 2 weeks before their trip.
At the same time, I'm jumping to Reina, your question. Do you offer visa for Mexican?
You know why we don't? We could, but the visas for travelers coming from Mexico, they're only like $25 and you get them right at the airport. In fact, I think in some cases, if you're depending on what airline you're getting your tickets through, they're already included in the price.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's very, very simple from every other country and cheaper than the American visas, which are more expensive. It's like a tax on the US traveler. I mean, it's not crazy expensive, just to be clear. Like our visas are about $60 and they're just built into the price of the trip.
Mm-hmm. Finishing the question of Rena. Also, I know bringing cash is very important since there are a lot of places that don't accept American credit cards.
All places, no places accept American credit cards. Yes. So bringing cash is important, but again, not a lot of cash. You don't need to, because like I said, your accommodations, your guide, your driver, your base level of gratuities, all of the experiences and tours and everything that we have include in our trips already prepaid. Mm-hmm. So the only thing that people are going to need to bring cash for is souvenirs. Mm-hmm. They want to buy cigars or rum or some alcoholic beverages won't be included, and just factor in 2 meals a day. Mm-hmm. But food is not expensive also in Havana. So even obviously we cater again higher net worth people. foodies. We're big foodie kind of company. Go to the very best restaurant in all of Havana. La Guarida, if some of you have been, is probably still thought of as the top restaurant in Cuba. There's a couple others too that could be really have practically Michelin star restaurants. It would be difficult for you, including a bottle of wine, including alcohol, to spend more than $40, $50 a person. Mm-hmm. And that's the top restaurant. So that's what I'm saying. You won't need a lot of cash, $100 a day, and you're eating and drinking like a king.
Mm-hmm. We're going back to Jeannie's question. Is Cuba requiring COVID travel insurance in case you get sick and need to quarantine?
Aha. So there we go. The dreaded pandemic situation question. And again, this is changing all the time. So we would just keep in touch with each other. When you have a Cuba request, the first thing you do is just pick up the phone and call us, send us an email, text, whatever. Here's the current situation. Cuba locked down the country March of 2020 in order to prevent the spread of the virus. And they did a wonderful job. I mean, they shut down the international airport. They protected their people. They had 8,000 cases as of November of 2020 throughout this whole process, right? They only had a few hundred fatalities. They reopened the airport end of November, not really to encourage tourism yet, but mostly because they needed to allow Cuban Americans to come back to Cuba and visit their families. It's a big part of their economy, and so many Cuban people really rely on the visits of their relatives to bring them goods and services and money. Unfortunately, these Americans also brought the virus with them. Those of us living in the United States are not shocked by this in any way, shape, or form. So there's a spike going on in Cuba right now. Therefore, Cuba, unfortunately, had to initiate a lockdown right now. And that current situation, I'm telling you right now, that's what's happening. When you land in Cuba and the airport's still open, if I were to get on a plane today, fly into Havana, the first thing they're going to do is test me. They issue their own PCR test. I have to then wait in my hotel until the results of that test come through. And it doesn't matter that I show up with a negative test that I took in the United States. They also require you to come with a negative test. They're still only trusting their own test. And therefore, you have to stay in your hotel right now 3 to 5 days waiting for that test result to come through. Obviously, we can't sell that to our tourists, even though the hotel they're staying is really nice, even if they stay in Kempinski and they can go to the restaurants and they can use the pool and everything else, it doesn't matter. So that's the situation today. Cuba has developed their own vaccine. This is a highly sophisticated country when it comes to medicine. You know, there's no vaccines being created in pretty much all of Latin and South America. Cuba has developed their own. It is in the final round of testing, and they expect that they're going to be vaccinating their population as early as beginning of April. As soon as that process is finished, we expect them to change this whole quarantine situation completely. So, very long answer. Sorry, I couldn't give a short answer to it, but that's what's going on right now. So we are not encouraging, obviously, travelers to go to Cuba, in March or April. We're taking bookings from the summer and forward, and we certainly expect by, at minimum the fall to be to be much more open and no quarantine issue and that sort of thing. But nobody knows, right? None of us here on this call know. I wish we all did. And therefore, that's why we have the policy in effect that there'll be no penalties for postponement due to Corona.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, David. Last question from Jeannie is, are there any yachts that can be chartered for a full day?
Any what, sorry?
Oh, yachts. Is there any yachts that can be chartered for?
Oh, yachts, yes. Well, no, not right now. There was, and then, that's another issue. There's a Marina Hemingway outside of Havana. There were a couple of vessels there that we were working with, but we had some issues with. Again, we just, level of customer service and safety and all of that from our perspective has to be at a level where we just can't mess around. So that's a work in progress for us. So today I will tell you, no, there isn't a yacht that we can do like a day trip, outside of Havana and take people around. But I believe that will change. So that's something that we'll be advising on as things progress here.
So Melissa, you're asking if you can get a copy of that presentation together with the recording. David, you will be able to send that.
Sure. Or you,
Jeannie,
or one of us. Yeah.
Once paid for COVID reason, you will fully refund the amount or only future credit. So that was answered. Celine, Canadians tend to book for locals also. So can they join them? Are US citizens allowed to do that? I'm not sure if I understand the Canadian.
Are they muted? Because they can ask the question directly.
Well, Celine, if you want to open your micro, I don't know if you microphone. Meanwhile, Henry, can you arrange trip for serious vegetarian? And we can see them both today. Hello.
Oh, hello. Hi. Thank you so much for being on camera. It's nice to see the two of you.
You can
yes.
Your mic is closed.
You can open up your mic. Yeah, you're muted. You're muted right now. But yes, the answer is absolutely vegetarian, no problem. No problem at all. Vegetarian, gluten-free, especially in Havana. When you get out into the countryside, the choices are more limited. Can we still cater to vegetarians? Absolutely. It's just, they're not going to have the variety they might have in some other destinations, but not a problem at all.
Thank you. Fabulous presentation.
Oh, thank you.
With us. Lina, you're asking if there is a specific Cuban cuisine.
Yes, there is. There's specific Cuban cuisine, no question about it. It goes, and it's beyond just the Cuban sandwich, which everybody seems to be so familiar with. The joke is, what do you call a Cuban sandwich in Cuba? And they just say it's a sandwich. That's the big joke. But here's the thing. Yes, there's actual Cuban cuisine. Cuban cuisine spans the gamut. They're very into seafood, so of course you have delicious fresh fish, and shrimp is a big part of Cuban cuisine. Lobster, also every type of meat and poultry. But it's not spicy, so not to be confused with Mexican food, for example, even though there's, they have a lot of staples that might be sort of similar, like black beans and rice and that sort of thing. But Cuban food tends to be much more mild.
We have Celine, you said, well, you're saying that's why they are building more and more hotels for the next 5 to 10 years. You're also asking where will the US Embassy be in Havana, and is it open now?
Yes, the US Embassy is there. It has been there for decades, and it has not moved, and it won't move. It's in a pretty prime location, right on the waterfront, right next to two big hotels. And it used to be called when there wasn't an embassy. So when President Obama came in and reestablished relations with the government of Cuba, it then became an embassy again. Prior to that, it was called the U.S. Interests section, and they still provided, limited amounts of services for U.S. citizens, like visa services, that sort of thing. But now it's a full embassy. They have taken it down to more of a skeleton staff under the Trump administration for a variety of reasons that we don't need to get into here. But now we have a new administration in the office, the Biden administration. We expect a new ambassador to be put in place in the next few years, and the staff to be, to raise the staffing levels and everything.
So 2 last questions before we finish. Celine, you said, how do you buy your deposit? On double room, single, triple, or you book only doubles?
How do I base?
Base your
Well,
business.
remember, all of our trips are private and custom, right? So it's, this will depend on your clients and whether they need singles, doubles, whatever. That's how we do our proposal. So we will know in advance, how many doubles, how many singles. If you're talking about that range of pricing that I quoted, it's a pretty broad range, but yeah, I guess you could say mainly we're basing that on double occupancy.
Thank you, David.
So
And the last question from Jewel. What have you heard so far about the possibility of President Biden opening up Cuba?
Well, I would say, if there was a Vegas line on it happening, it's a good bet. It will happen. We were kind of hopeful that he would do some significant things even in the first 100 days. Everyone talks about the first 100 days and what's going to happen. I'm not sure he's going to touch tourism related issues with Cuba, but definitely will he be taking on kind of where the Obama administration left off and trying to strengthen relations between the two countries. I would say it's almost 100% certainty. And therefore we would expect to see cruise ships going to Cuba again. We'll expect to see the reopening of all these silly restrictions that were put in place in the last, honestly, a lot of them were put in place right before the election in November. They put some hotels on this restricted list that weren't on the list before. A lot of that stuff, we're expecting it to be lifted even, in 2021.
Thank you very much, David. Thank you very much, everyone. So that's the end of our webinar. Thank you. Thank you for your
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And we hope to see you soon. We, of course, have beautiful webinar also next week to be planned. Thank you, David. It's so interesting.
Yes.
It's such a fascinating destination. Huh?
And let me just remind everyone, Cuba, it's not necessarily as straightforward of a destination as some other places that you all work with and sell. And we're aware of that. And so therefore, don't hesitate. There's no stupid questions. There's nothing that you're not bothering us. This is what we're here for. Just send us an email, call us. I've got a full staff and sales team, but honestly, me personally, I'm very involved with almost every trip. It's my passion. So I will get on the phone with you and your clients and talk about travel to Cuba. Not just the nuts and bolts, but talk about why it's such a wonderful place to visit, what they can expect to see and do there. I'm happy to do that.
Voilà.
So consider me like a sales tool.
Plus, you're giving back so much to the community. So that's great things too.
It's really important. I got to tell you, they need us. They need us. They need us to visit desperately, and they deserve it. The people are wonderful. Don't penalize the Cuban people for the situation with their government. It's just like anything else in the rest of the world, right? Everybody are wonderful, loving people who care about each other and care about this planet that we live on, passionate about, culture and the arts, and they're curious about our culture. It's got nothing to do with what's going on, in government. It transcends politics. And so we need to go there. We need to send our wonderful travelers to see this culture.
What a wonderful way to finish on those beautiful words of yours, David. Thank you again, and thank you, everybody. Au revoir, buenas tardes, boa tarde, and we'll see you soon. Thank you. And
thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.